Okay. This one was a bit spicy. I don't know how to describe it. If you're not comfortable with that, I don't know what you should do. I'm just warning you. Follow my Instagram when that gets to the next 100. I forgot what we're on. I'll upload an hour. What if? Also, when we reach 7,000, I'm making a Discord. So if you're new, subscribe. If you are not new and have been watching for a while, make sure you are subscribed. And let's get into the video. Roll the intro.
And today thinking myself
Late last night, Naruto was sitting on top of his father's head, idly wondering on how the villagers would react to his reveal. I can think of two things. Either they would start worshipping me, or the villagers who have some morals left in them would feel guilty enough to commit suicide based on the reason that they tortured the son of their beloved Yonde for years. What do you think, Kurama? A chuckle sounded from within his mind. You know how the villagers are, Naruto. They would probably try to suck up to you after knowing just who you are. But I wouldn't mind witnessing the second option. What about you? Which one do you prefer? Naruto sat at Kurama's insinuation. I don't prefer either one. I would actually prefer if they just treated me like any other villager. But that won't be happening anytime soon. Considering I'm the heir to two major clans of Konoha. Lord, if I make Chunin. Kurama huffed. Humans confuse me terribly. An excellent opportunity for you to crush them beneath your heel or for what they have done to you, and you're considering letting them go. I'd have made a meal out of them if I were you. Naruto chuckled. I don't see what's wrong in being the better man, Kurama. Kurama was about to say something when he sensed an influx of chakra about 2 miles away, along with negative feelings. Naruto, can you sense that? Naruto raised an eyebrow, but spread out his senses nonetheless, sitting up straight when he too sensed the amount of chakra being molded. Just who was molding a Chunin level amount of chakra at this time in the night? Making a half ramp scene, he used a series of body flickers to get to where the chakra signature were. When he reached there, he was horrified about what he witnessed. He saw the preliminary proctor Gekko Hayate locked in battle with the Sand Jonin Baki. If Naruto remembered correctly and was losing badly, he had numerous injuries on his person. If that blade of wind cut him, Hayate could kiss his life goodbye. He immediately acted. First priority was to get Hayate to the Hokage Tower. Baki held a blade of wind in his right hand, the other hand holding the sword of the proctor. He had to admit, Hayate was exceptionally skilled at Kenjutsu and had almost gotten him, but his sickness slowed him down terribly, allowing Baki to gain the other hand. Trying to stop his blade of wind, he was about to shove it into Hayate's chest when a blur grabbed Hayate and dodged, making Baki miss completely. Baki had just enough time to turn to his left, where he had seen the blur go, to witness Hayate disappearing in a blue flash. He cursed under his breath. Damn it, he escaped. Kage-sama won't like this. He vanished in a wind shunshin to inform his leader. The thought of the flash completely missed him. Naruto appeared in the Hokage's office, surprised to see that his Gigi still working at this time of the night. Anbu surrounded him in an instant, the only reason not scaring him because he still held Hayate in a fireman's carry. Hiruzen immediately stood up. Tora, get Hayate to the medical wing of this tower immediately. The Anbu stepped forward, took Hayate from Naruto and vanished. Hiruzen turned his attention to Naruto and spoke in a commanding voice. Report! Naruto straightened up and narrated what happened. At the end of his report, Hiruzen sighed heavily and sat down. I didn't know it was this bad. Naruto asked in a slight confusion. What do you mean, Hokage-sama? Hiruzen folded his hands and rested his chin on it. Naruto, on your suspicions, I asked Gekko Hayate to keep a watch on Yakushi Kabuto. He was to report me any unusual activities that concerned the target. It seemed that tonight is the first time he witnessed something significant, but was discovered and was likely going to be killed in order to keep the information from being discovered. He looked at Naruto in the eye. It is most likely that Konoha is facing the possibility of an invasion from Suna. Naruto folded his arms. I didn't know Suna had enough manpower to take on the strongest of the 5 on its own. In fact, from the books I've read, Suna is the weakest of the 5. Hyuzen shook his head. I know the Kazekage well enough to understand that he's not stupid enough to make such a bold move, which means he has an ally. He had a suspicion as to who it was, but that was for him to deal with. Naruto nodded. That would surely be the case, but we can rule out the possibility of Kumo, Iwa, and Kiri attacking. Kiri is still wrapped up in a civil war. Iwa is still recovering from the defeat in the last war. Kuma wouldn't want to break the peace treaty you had established over the Hyuga just yet, which leaves... Hiruzen filled in the blanks. There's a new up-and-coming hidden village, whose genins have participated in the exams. Otogaki-kir. It is possible, but we don't know for sure. Yes, Hokage-sama. Dismissed. Flashback in. Why don't you ask your vixen? She might have an answer, Kurama suggested, both half serious and half innocently. Naruto absently nodded until he registered what Kurama said. What do you mean by that? Tamari isn't my vixen, he corrected him in a sputter. Just what was the kitsune trying to say? Kurama laughed. I'm the only being in this world, Naruto. You can't fool me. I've seen the way you look at her. You just want to grab her and... Shut up! He shouted to the being inside of him, his face a deep shade of red. She shook his head violently to shake off the train of thoughts Kurama had started. He couldn't imagine himself pinning her to a wall. He banged his head on the floor to clear it. Why'd you suggest it? These thoughts are hard to get rid of, you know. Kurama, the bastard, just laughed full-heartedly. Naruto decided to eat at Ichiraku tonight, just because he felt too lazy to cook dinner. Kurama grumbled from within, saying that he always made his clones cook. Naruto easily blocked them out, gathering and sealing the kunai up in a scroll. He put the scroll in his closet and stepped outside his building. Leisurely walking in the direction of the ramen bar, he was surprised to see Tamari about 100 meters from him, looking rather annoyed. She seemed to be searching for someone, and Naruto had an inkling as to who she was searching for. Naruto observed her looking around before catching his mop of blonde hair and marching in his direction, scowl firmly etched onto her face and anger rolling off her in waves. She sighed and steeled himself, for he knew what was about to come. Tamara reached him quickly and stopped in front of him, hands on her lips. The anger was visible in your eyes. Where were you today? You missed our spar. Naruto didn't know if he should feel afraid of her or amused about whether how cute she looked when she was angry. So he just held up his hands in defense. I know, but I have a legitimate reason for missing it. Tamari folded her arms. Then let's hear it. Naruto put his arms in his pockets and thought on how to tell her about his simulation fight this night. You see, Jaime, he grinned at the blush that came on Tamari's face. Since Monday is the day of the Chunin finals, my sensei wanted to have one last fight to test my skills, so he told me to rest the whole day to be in top condition for our fight. The lie came out smoother than what he thought, and it was partially true. Level 6 was no joke, and Naruto wanted to be in peak form for it. Naruto got an idea. How about as an apology, I take you out for dinner? He didn't even stutter this time, he thought proudly. Tamari thought that it was a lie, but she couldn't fault for his sensei having to evaluate his student one last time before the exams, so she believed it. She blinked at the sudden question, and a smirk spread on her face. She took a step closer to him. Is this another date, Naruto? Naruto smirked as well, internally jumping in joy, and took a step forward himself. Their faces were inches from each other, and he could vaguely feel the air she was exhaling. It was a unique, sweet, and salty flavor. Only if you want it to be, he whispered, huskily. He vaguely remembered that they were in the middle of a market. He, however, didn't expect Tamari to lean forward so that her lips were a hair breadth away from his own. Oh, I do, she returned. She was surprised when Naruto suddenly backed away, grinning playfully. Before she could feel hurt about her advances being rejected, an arm was draped across her shoulder, pulling her close. She yelped and steadied herself against what she felt to be Naruto's upper body. Then I really hope you don't mind if we go to Ichiraku. If I had known, I would have planned earlier. Naruto tried to play it smooth. It was a risky move, pulling Temari into a slide hug. He had expected to be bashed in the head by her fan, but when she didn't, he relaxed and simultaneously celebrated inside his mind. She likes me. Kurama felt nauseous at how much joy was filled in that single thought. For a being of hatred such as himself, joy was his kryptonite, so he just tried to ignore it as much as he could. Such sappiness didn't suit him. Naruto kept his arms around Temari's shoulder and started walking in the direction of the ramen bar. Temari had to adjust her arms, so she just put one hand on his side. I really don't mind, she coolly replied, but she was barely keeping from letting a goofy smile spread on her face. She knew she liked Naruto to the point of having an intense crush on him, but being in such close physical contact with him only after knowing him for only a short time was almost overwhelming. The trip was short, lasting only 5 minutes. Just when they were within 50 meters of the bar, Naruto removed his arms from her shoulder, instead enveloping her hand in his own, giving it a small squeeze. He gave a warm smile to Temari, who blushed slightly, but returned the smile and squeezed back. They entered the ramen bar, and Ayami was the first to spot them, and then she spotted them holding hands and smiling. She promptly squealed in happiness, increasing the blush on Naruto and Temari's faces, but neither let go of each other's hands. Toichi came running out of the back in response to his daughter's squeal. When he saw the reason for her squeal, he himself grinned in parental pride. Naruto! So you finally made it official, I see, he commented. Naruto and Temari blushed even more at this, but Naruto was the one who spoke. We haven't, actually, but I will in the near future, he said with a wink towards Temari, managing to somewhat reduce his blush. Temari, however, just barely kept from hitting him from embarrassing her. The only reason she didn't because of what Naruto said. Ayami clasped her hands together and slightly dreamily. Oh, you two look so cute together. Naruto and Temari slid into the seats, side by side. They gave their orders, but when they were served, they were surprised by Toichi's announcement. Today's meal is on the house. Think of it as a congratulatory gift from us. He added a wink in Naruto's direction. Naruto and Temari tried to deny that they weren't in a relationship yet. Sounded in both of their minds, but Toichi easily waved their sputters away. Trust me, he said. Adults know it when two people are meant to be together or not. That sealed it. Naruto and Temari had both reached a peak of embarrassment after hearing that statement, but there was nothing they could do until they finished their meals. Deliberately avoiding meeting each other's eye, they quietly finished their meals and got out of there. Temari was the first one to break the silence between them. Those works are weird. They keep teasing us all the time, she grumbled in annoyance. Naruto sheepishly rubbed the back of his head. Don't be like that. There are some of the very people in the village that care about me. Some of the very few people. It was a question of curiosity, so Naruto couldn't fault her for that. My bad. That sparked Temari's interest. She didn't know Naruto only had a small amount of people close to him. What do you mean when you say some of the very few? It was a question of curiosity, so Naruto couldn't fault her for that. But the memories of years of loneliness resurfaced, and some of the sadness must have shown in his face. For Temari hesitantly backtracked. You don't have to answer if you don't want. Naruto waved away her apology. It's okay, you were just curious. But if you don't mind, I'd like to keep that answer to myself. His tone was soft, but the request was clear in his voice. Temari nodded, but wondered just what had happened to Naruto for him to get so sad so easily in his life. She couldn't help but compare Naruto and Gaara in that aspect, both of them shunned by the village in some way. She felt for him, just like she felt for Gaara. Gaara had been chosen by their father to bear the particular burden of a Biju. Because of that, everyone in the village had ostracized Gaara in the extreme. Their father felt that Gaara was too dangerous, which is why he hired assassins to kill him. That was the last straw for Gaara. He became cold. So cold that the slightest provocation would cause him to kill someone, without batting an eyebrow. She tried to show him that she still cared for him as his older sister, but the distrust was so much deep rooted into him that he distanced himself even from her. However, Naruto wasn't like that. He was willing to trust others, like her, but another problem lay in front of her. If he tried to comfort him, it would just be a lie, for they would be standing on the opposite sides of a war just 2 days later. So she just held his hand, trying to give what little comfort she could. Naruto was surprised when he felt a warm hand holding his own. He saw Tamari smiling at him, and he smiled in return, knowing that she was trying to comfort him. She turned his eyes back forward and saw an alley coming up. He felt extremely bad for what he was about to do, but as a shinobi of Konoha, the village came before everything, even personal feelings. So he pulled her into the alleyway, earning a surprised yelp from her. However, she was well trained. Her reflexes were fast, but nowhere near his own. He immediately grabbed her right hand with his left, pinning it above her head. Just as her left reached for her fan, he grabbed it with his right and forcefully pinned it alongside her other hand. He positioned himself carefully but swiftly, putting his leg slightly in between of her two legs so that his privates could be protected. He kept his head at enough distance so that she couldn't headbutt him and break his nose. All in all, Tamari had nowhere to go, no matter how much she thrashed. He raised his right leg a little, then gently stomped it on the ground, erecting a special privacy barrier around them. This was one of his father's creation. He can hear the sound from outside, but the sound from within the barriers won't be heard from outside. Also, a pulse of chakra within the barrier won't be able to be felt from outside, which meant no pulses of chakra could be sent to signal for help. Tricky business to use with this feat, but thanks to his excellent chakra control, Naruto managed. Tamari was surprised just how swiftly he was able to outmatch her reflexes and pin her to the wall. She felt hurt inside, a feeling of betrayal that was overshadowed by the boiling rage. She even felt slight fear with the way they were positioned. She turned furious eyes onto him, but froze when a wave of killing intent passed over her. Looking up into his eyes, she felt afraid when all she saw was freezing coldness, absent of the complete warmth they were filled with from earlier. The killing intent was not a problem, though, as she just brushed it aside. Gar repeatedly used it on them, so the effect was null. She tried to project her rage on him. "What are you doing, you son of a..." "What is Suna planning?" The question stopped her, cold eyes widening. She suddenly had an idea of what this was all about. "What?" Naruto narrowed his eyes, freezing her with just his stare. She wasn't even thrashing in his arms now. "I don't like repeating myself, so pay attention. What is Suna planning to do?" Tamari tried, but she was frozen with his stare. The stare that promised a lot of pain if she didn't answer. She hesitantly sent a pulse of chakra, hoping someone would sense it and come to her help. "It's useless," he coldly informed her. "I put a barrier around us. No one would be able to sense that pulse of chakra. In fact, no one would be able to sense anything, let alone hear." Her hopes of getting help crashed and shattered. She also noticed that the killing intent had increased substantially, causing her to shake a little. "I can easily deduce that Gaara is an unstoppable Jinchuriki." "Yes, I know that," he said in response to her wide-eyed look. "No village would dare send an unstoppable Jinchuriki into another village. I also witnessed your sensei," he sneered at the word, "attacking a fellow Konoha nin with the intent to kill, possibly to prevent some important information from being discovered by us. So I'll ask again, what is Suna planning to do?" Tamari couldn't believe that Naruto knew about what Gaara was. Add on the fact he had apparently witnessed Baki-sensei attacking a Konoha nin, and she had been captured by Naruto for information on the invasion. They were already on the cusp of being discovered, so she couldn't see many options. Sighing with resignation, she admitted, "I'm sure you know of the new village Otogakikir." Upon seeing his nod, she continued, "A while before the Chunin exams, our father, the Kazekage, was approached by the leader of Otogakikir, a man known as Orochimaru." Naruto did not allow Tamari to see his shock at the piece of news. He just nodded Tamari to continue. "I don't know what they talked about, but father began planning for an invasion a while after their meeting. He informed us that Otogakikir would be aiding us during the invasion to cripple Konoha. It was his plan to let Gaara loose during the invasion. Since Gaara has full control of his Biju, he would be set free, destroying the village in his unleashed form. Is that right?" Tamari nodded, knowing that the invasion had practically failed. Knowing that the invasion had practically failed. Now that she had divulged the information, Naruto released a sigh. I suspected as much. Tamari tried to hide the quiver in her voice. But why did you question me yourself instead of handing me over to the Kage? Naruto removed the cold gaze from her, unconsciously making her relax. He looked back at her with a worried gaze. I don't think you would have liked being subjected to the interrogation department. Trust me, they aren't nice. Tamari wholeheartedly agreed with that. She didn't even want to imagine what they would have done to get the information out of her. She looked up and it was then she realized their position. Her arms pinned to the wall, Naruto's legs in between hers and bodies pressed to each other's. Oh, and don't forget that their lips were once again separated by mere inches. A blush of massive proportions came onto her face as she locked gazes with Naruto, who realized the same thing as her. His face also matched the same shade of red as hers as he locked his gaze with her. An awkward silence descended upon them, which Tamari broke after several moments. Naruto? She whispered, trying to think of something to say, but Naruto was on a different track from hers. This was his chance, his moment, and he was in absolutely no way wasting it. Not to mention, if he did waste his chance, Jiraiya would beat him to within an inch of his life and then some. So he was going to seize it with both of his hands. He blushed. He hushed her softly and leant forward, gently capturing her lips. It was the most pleasurable feeling Naruto had ever experienced. Her lips were soft, lingering with the taste of the ramen she ate earlier, which made her taste all that better. Tamari went wide-eyed for a moment, but she closed her eyes in pleasure and slowly returned the kiss, molding her lips with Naruto. She knew it was wrong of her. They were enemies on the opposite side of a war now. They wouldn't be kissing like this, but she couldn't help herself. They shouldn't be. She had, ever since that chaste kiss from that day, wanted to see for herself how Naruto's lips tasted like. Naruto felt like he was on cloud 9. He decided to take it a little further and bit her lower lip, causing her to gasp. He took advantage of it and pushed his tongue into her mouth, exploring it. He didn't know why, but he wanted to taste more of her, feel more of her. Okay, relax. Okay. Okay, no, I can read this. So he released her hands and put them around her waist, pulling her flesh against him. Tamari was stunned when she felt something went entering her mouth and exploring it slowly. It took a moment to realize that it was Naruto's tongue, but instincts were faster than her thinking, so even before she decided what to do, she was already massaging her tongue against Naruto. She couldn't even begin to describe the pleasure she was feeling. When Naruto released her hands, hers automatically went around his neck, pulling him close and further deepening their kiss. She could feel how warm Naruto was, since they both had particularly molded their bodies together. They separated for a moment to take a breath, a string of saliva connecting their mouths. Before Naruto could even begin to think whether to do it again or not, Tamari had already connected their mouths again, kissing him with more fervor than the previous kiss. I don't know how to say that. Her tongue aggressively invaded his mouth, exploring it and massaging his own tongue with more force than what his tongue did to hers. Her one hand went up to his head, running through his hair. Naruto didn't even think, he just enthusiastically returned her action. His hands began to wander. First they explored her back, then they explored her side, each action gaining a pleasant moan or sigh from Tamari's mouth. He slid his hand lower, letting the primal part of his brain take control. His left hand wrapped around her waist again, while his right slipped lower and gently squeezed her butt. Tamari felt like she was in heaven, with all the pleasure she was feeling. In the back of her mind, she wondered whether Naruto was just this good, or was it the euphoria of the first kiss. Either way, she wasn't complaining. She was about to break their kiss when one of Naruto's hands gently squeezed her butt. Pleasure racked through her body, and she released a loud moan of approval and pleasure. Naruto, taking it as a sign to continue, gently squeezed her other cheek, being rewarded with another moan. Suddenly he didn't know why. He decided that Temari was standing a bit lower than what he liked, so he bent a little, taking hold of her inner thighs from behind and lifted her up, pushing her against the wall, causing her to give out a surprised yelp. But she didn't break their kiss. Instead, her arms tightened around his neck while her legs wrapped around him, locking behind his back, their bodies pressing against each other even more. Temari's dress slid up from her thighs a little, exposing a little bit of her thighs and skin for Naruto to feel. Naruto repositioned both his hands and her clothed butt and squeezed, gaining moans of approval from Temari. They kept kissing like that for 5 minutes. 5 more minutes, with Naruto occasionally and simultaneously squeezing both of her butt cheeks and getting moans of pleasure, after which Naruto finally heard the rational part of his brain that was screaming, "You're going too fast, you idiot, stop." Temari too finally felt amidst of all the pleasure she was feeling that they were going too far too fast and was about to break their kiss and leave forcibly if she had to, but she didn't need to. Naruto broke their kiss first, looking at her with reluctance. No words needed to be said by either of them. Naruto gently released her, her legs coming to rest on the ground and his hand coming to rest on her waist, while hers moved to his shoulder. Both of them were breathing heavily, testing each other's breath, trying to come down from the high. I think we can both agree not to mention this anymore. Naruto found his voice first. Temari slightly nodded as both of them took a step away from each other, both feeling the lack of touch. Temari turned and walked away from Naruto, straightening her dress and smoothing out wrinkles when Naruto stopped her with his voice. "On the day of the finals, I'll see you on the other side," he said, a whisper, but each word was clearly heard by her. A lone tear slipped from her right eye, which she fiercely wiped away. Oh, tear. She did not care whether he saw her wiping it away or not. "Good night," she hesitantly whispered, and a blink of an eye, she was gone. Naruto was trying to get his thoughts in order. Absently, he raised his foot and stomped softly on the ground, muttering "Kai" under his breath. Releasing the barrier, only then he gave a reply to the empty surroundings. "Goodbye, Sabaku no Temari." He flashed away after that. He had a simulation to demolish. He realized that he might have displayed lust on the surface, but deep inside he knew it. He didn't know why or how, nor did he care. He just knew it. Temari was the one for him. He felt genuine feelings towards her. He didn't know how to describe them. He knew that it was far past the like stage. All he knew was that if he got the chance to hold her again, he would be grabbing it, and he would not let it go from that time. Unfortunately, that was the first and last moment he would ever have with her, for in just 2 days they would be on the opposite side of a war, trying to kill each other. And Naruto knew that he won't be able to do it. He won't be able to kill Temari if she came before him. He had lost her, and the chances of being with her again were virtually impossible. Or so he thought. Okay guys, that's where I'm gonna end it. I hope you've all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next part. Bye!
Wanted a bitch who was on the move, but you wanna goddamn late. Got that one in my bed and she just wanna sleep. Fucking up all of the sheets. She only wake up to eat. Do this shit every week. Like why you do that? Crying you wanna be great, but sleeping until the next day. Why you do that? Got that much in the bank. We go out, she